Hello, everybody. Welcome to our very first episode of Let's Talk Title with Emerald Coast Title Services. I'm your host and president of ECTS, Dion Moniz, and today here with me is our vice president, Casey King. Now, Casey wears a lot of different hats in our company, so I'm going to let her kind of tell you all what all she does.
Yes, I'm the vice president. I manage the office in Santa Rosa Beach, and I do all of the marketing and business development for the company. And since we're both attorneys, we also talk to the agents a lot if they have questions with contract provisions or need help drafting contract provisions. So,
yeah, because one of the things we like to do most for our clients is education.
Yes.
Which is kind of what led us to this podcast.
Right.
And initially, the intent for the podcast was to help, educate our clients, agents, realtors, buyers, sellers on all things related to contracts, title insurance, et cetera.
Yes.
And of course, this little thing called coronavirus came along, and we're very unfortunate. We're all having to go through it together, but it's an unfortunate situation.
Yes.
And so the timing is perfect to kind of talk about how that's impacting the real estate industry.
Right.
So what are you hearing from our clients on how it's impacting the closings?
Well, I think, there's a lot of anxiety out there. Nobody really knows how long it's going to last or what's going to happen. Some of our closings are moving to a later date for the closing date. Some have canceled, but not as many as I would have expected. I did do a closing yesterday afternoon and this morning, and we don't touch, or we stay 6 feet away. We make them sanitize before they can go in the closing room. We've discussed having drive-up closings so that they can stay in the car and we just pass the documents and explain where they need to sign. But I think right now everybody's just a little anxious and not sure how this is all going to play out. Yeah,
it's a very uncertain time. Hopefully it's very short term. But the lights are on at ECTS, and we are getting through as many closings as we can. Mm-hmm. One other thing that we started doing is to try to convert to mail-away closings and offer free mobile notary services to our clients for that. And why don't you explain a little bit about what that entails?
Well, we've had mail-away closings forever, mainly for clients that were out of town and couldn't come in town for an in-person closing. But it's really simple. We just mail all the documents that are clearly marked where you need to sign or initial, and that's done a few days before the actual closing so that the buyer, seller, whoever's signing can send the documents back in a self-addressed stamped UPS or FedEx envelope, and they'll scan the copy to us and then mail the original. And then once all the documents are received, then Allison can disperse, or Julie, whichever closing agent. But it's been around for a while, but we're trying to encourage more people to use it now that nobody wants to be in person.
Yeah, with all the social distancing, and for some of our clients that are closing out of state or buying from out of state,
right,
they might be under quarantine, so they can't travel or can't get to us. So we'll find a mobile notary that'll be willing to go over there and help sign all the docs. And again, that's a fee that we're absorbing as a service to our clients to help get this done. Now, the challenge is to do a mail away that we need an extra couple of days on the closing timeline.
Yes.
And so sometimes lenders don't get us everything when we need it right away.
That is true.
Mail away might not be available.
And the other thing that could possibly happen is it seems like the mail carriers are now a lot more busy and have a lot more deliveries to make, so they might not be able to get it back to us on time. I've seen like Amazon, where it used to take 2 days, now it's taking more like 4 or 5. And so sometimes that's happening with UPS or FedEx.
And then we're also, or at least I'm starting to hear, surveyors, appraisers, inspectors, they're either delayed or not wanting to go out to the houses and do the inspections. So that's going to cause a little bit of a problem. So we'll get into a little bit about how this impacts, whether we can cancel closing or move a closing because of Corona. But I wanted to touch on a couple of other things. First, And so another workaround that we're seeing that our underwriters are providing is extended gap coverage for these policies. And if you've ever been to England and ridden on the subway, they always say mind the gap, but we're talking about a different gap. So why don't you explain a little bit about that?
Yes, the gap in this situation is the time between the date or time in which the document is executed and when it's recorded. Typically, that's not that long of a period, maybe a day or two. And by statute, the underwriters have to cover that period with their title commitment. But with the coronavirus, it's possible that county recording offices might be closed or delayed, such that the gap is not just a day or two, but many days or weeks or even, however long this goes on. So they have agreed to have a couple of additional documents signed so that they can insure over that extended gap period.
Yeah, unfortunately, none of our courthouses have closed down, or at least the recording offices haven't closed down. And I'll have to admit, we use Simplifile, which is electronic recording.
Yes.
And I always thought that didn't need a person on the other end. But apparently you still need a human on the other end of that
to process
it. And so if we ever get to a point where the recording offices are closed, as long as we're still able to run our business, we can still handle the closings, we can offer the extended gap insurance. All that's required is an additional affidavit or two that we'll be able to provide as part of our closing documents. So it's no extra work on the other parties. We'll make sure it's handled, we'll make sure it's in the title policy, and we'll be good to go in that regard.
Yes.
So another solution that we offer to try to do a workaround on these closings is remote online notarization. And that actually came around the beginning of this year pursuant to the Remote and Electronic Notarization Act of 2020.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that and why it's not exactly foolproof right now.
Well, it's pretty new. The Florida legislature just passed a statute allowing remote online notarization. It's done through a third-party vendor. It's an interactive online audio, video closing, so everybody's on the TV watching everybody sign the documents. But it's pretty new, so not all the lenders are on board with it yet, but I think they're getting there.
And the challenge with that, at least from what we've heard from our other lender clients, is that the secondary market will not accept an electronic signature on a mortgage or note, because then they can't sell them off to the other buyers.
Right. The wet signature seems to be the holdup.
Right.
But I think it's coming around, and I think once they get the kinks worked out, that will be a great option for everyone.
And I have a feeling that this whole epidemic or pandemic, I guess, is going to speed up the process a little bit.
I would believe so, for sure.
So fingers and toes crossed that we have worldwide acceptance, or at least nationwide acceptance of RON.
Right.
So that we can actually use that as a resource and keep things going.
And it's available for cash transactions.
Yes,
right now.
that is a great point.
So our underwriters are willing to insure a RON notarized closing documents up to $1 million. And then after $1 million, it's on a case-by-case basis.
Yep. So if we're handling your closing and you want to know about RON, feel free to reach out and ask us, and we'll tell you whether we can or can't do it and why. All right. So now, to me, the most important part, and that is, how is coronavirus impacting the party's ability to cancel or delay closing? Now in Florida, we have two main contract forms. That's the FAR-BAR form and the CRISP form. They each have force majeure clauses, but they're each a little bit different.
Right.
So I'm going to let you touch on FAR-BAR, Casey, and tell everyone what it says and why it does or doesn't apply for coronavirus.
Well, FAR-BAR does use the language that in the event that the parties cannot perform because of the inability to obtain a service, it doesn't state a pandemic or an epidemic explicitly, and it doesn't have the catch-all provision of or any other reason outside the control of the parties.
Let's just read the language real quick so our listeners and viewers can know. So under FAR-BAR in paragraph 18G, which starts at line 513 of the contract, it says buyer or seller shall not be required to perform any obligation under this contract or be liable to each other for damages so long as performance or non-performance of the obligation or the availability of services, like you just touched on,
Right.
insurance or required approvals essential to closing is disrupted, delayed, caused, or prevented by force majeure. So that's the key language, the availability of services
Yes.
or required approvals essential to closing.
Yes.
But in the next sentence, it defines force majeure and it does not get into epidemics,
Yes.
pandemics, stuff like that. So it's a little wishy-washy on whether
Exactly.
FARBAR specifically accounts for the situation we're in now.
And I can tell you it hasn't been decided by any court.
Right, because it's brand new. So what that forces us to do as lawyers is try to guess.
Yes.
And our famous response as a lawyer is, it depends.
Exactly.
And that holds true here too.
Yes.
Although the language in the FARBAR form does not specifically address a pandemic, I'm pretty sure that a court, if it came down to litigation, would enlarge or broaden the meaning behind the force majeure. And especially if someone's not able to get to us because of travel bans, or if there's a lockdown on a specific county and they can't get to us to sign,
Right.
or if we can't find a mobile notary to
Yes.
get to the parties to sign, I feel comfortable arguing that to a court that that's a good enough excuse.
Yes.
But I am telling my clients that call that it's not grounds to cancel a contract,
Yes.
just delay closing.
Yes.
Do you feel the same
I
way?
do. Yes. Unless, if it's more than 30 days, that's kind of a sticky because of the verbiage in the force majeure clause.
Yeah, that's right. It does say if the force majeure event occurs for more than 30 days, then either party may terminate the contract, and then the EMD is refundable.
Yes.
So until we have lockdowns for more than 30 days, we don't know how it's going to apply.
Exactly.
So just be mindful that if you're under a FARBAR contract for this situation, it's a little more gray. Now, CRISP actually, I usually don't like the CRISP contract.
Right, exactly.
But their language in the force majeure is a little more coronavirus friendly.
It is. Good
And
way
so,
to put it.
not that anyone needs to be friendly with coronavirus, but
Right.
go ahead and explain the difference in CRISP.
It does contain that catch-all provision that force majeure includes any other such causes in which by the exercise of due diligence, the non-performing party is unable in whole or in part to prevent or overcome. So it's that catch-all, basically any other reason outside of the party's control.
Right. And so, as much as I don't like CRISP, they actually, unbeknownst to them,
Right.
their language now actually does contemplate something like coronavirus. So
Yes.
if you're under a CRISP contract, it does allow, with that catch-all language, to at least, again, extend the closing date. Again, not cancel.
Right.
And under CRISP, it just, again, has the 30-day language.
Mm-hmm.
So once we get into this, like I said, if we're in this for more than 30 days and you have a question, if you're in a contract and you have a question about how this coronavirus is impacting the party's obligations, that's what Casey and I like to do. We want you to call us and we'll walk you through that. And we actually came up today with some language to be added to the contract.
Yes, you drafted some very helpful language.
So we'll just do a little teaser and say that if you're interested in getting this new language that we're going to send out to our clients to be added into the contract under the additional terms section, then it'll specifically allow for delays caused by pandemics, epidemics, or natural health emergencies like coronavirus. So reach out to us and we'll let you know. We're also probably going to send out an email to all of our clients with that language that they can cut and paste.
Yes.
All right, Casey, how you feeling about our podcast debut so far?
Well, I don't like being on camera, but I think it's great that we're able to put something out there for our realtors and our clients. I was on a 2-hour conference call yesterday we had a board meeting, and I think everybody is feeling so anxious. Nobody knows how to handle this with their employees, what's going to happen in the future. So I think it's good for us to put something out there for our clients so that they know we're here, we're understanding, we're willing to work with them, and everything's going to be okay.
Yep.
We're going to come through this together.
Absolutely. We'll get through this.
Yes.
Well, I did want to mention, so there is a service out there. Most of our realtor clients use Form Simplicity.
Yes.
And the Florida Association of Realtors just recently released a new addendum to take into account extensions as a result of the coronavirus. And I think it's actually called the Coronavirus COVID-19 Extension Addendum to Contract. And it's a one-page form. It has various boxes that you check depending on what deadlines you're extending. It makes it really easy to extend a contract based on coronavirus. Unfortunately, it's not available for FAR yet.
Right.
So I guess just CRISP right now, right? Vacant land contract,
yes.
Commercial contract, and then residential sale and purchase contract. So we're kind of waiting on FAR to come out with something similar.
Yes. It has not been approved by the Florida Bar. And I think the other important thing to note is that it includes check boxes for extensions, not cancellations.
Correct. So. Yes. Although under the finance contingency amendment, it does actually allow cancellation if they've been approved and then suddenly the bank withdraws approval as a result of the coronavirus.
Yes.
Then the buyer at that point can back out and get the EMD back. So that's a resource out there for the real estate agents that use Form Simplicity. If you're on FAR and you need help, we can help you with that on the extension language. Yes. Nothing that difficult about it, but we're glad to help. And I guess, as we always preach at our seminars, watch those deadlines. Yes. And it's even more important now.
It's more important.
So again, if you're on the buyer side, the seller side, watch those deadlines in the contract. If we need to get an extension due to the coronavirus, we'll help you figure out which of those deadlines need to be extended. Yes. It's not necessarily just going to be a global extension, depending on what side of the deal you're on.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, because if you're a seller, you might not want to extend the financing contingency, just the sale date.
Right.
So anyway, that's something that we can help with.
For sure.
And I'm sorry I made you get out of your pajamas to come here today for the video.
Yes. I showered.
We're all having to work from home, and I'm sure the agents are trying to figure out ways to do 3D tours and everything of the houses since people can't come do open houses.
Right.
And, so we're all having to modify our routines to make this work, but let's all work together so that we can make it work.
Yes. And it was actually nice coming into the office, getting dressed and coming into the office today.
You clean up pretty well.
Well, thank you. So do you.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for today's podcast. Hopefully you got a little bit of education out of it. And just know that we want everyone to stay healthy, stay safe. And if we can help you through any of this, like I said, with your contracts, with your closings, please feel free to reach out to us. Even if you're not using us for a closing, we're still happy to answer questions for you and try to walk you through this because, again, we all need to stick together.
We do.
And for a future podcast, if there are any specific topics that you want to hear about, reach out to me, Casey, Facebook us, whatever. Let us know, and we'll be glad to do that. We hope to do a lot of these.
Yeah.
And so we're always looking for good material. So let us know what you want to learn about, and we'll do our best to accommodate. So for now, that's it for Let's Talk Title with Emerald Coast Title Services. I'm Dion, this is Casey, and we're signing out.